Hey, what is in your story that feels like a limit into where you want to go? I'm Gretel from The Unlimited Way, and today we're going to talk about the story that represents your limit. What holds your freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it and the way you want to do it. And at the end, having that freedom represent abundance and being limited, seeing potentials, and having the capacity to rewrite what you can be. So in this video, we're going to talk about that story we may all tell to ourselves that hold us from the true self, from that infinite potential within. Equally, we're going to identify how to rewrite it and how that story can affect us. And let's begin with the story that I found fascinating. You may have seen this online. If you do, hopefully you will relate with me. Science put flies into a jar. The flies tried to go out of the jar, but they stopped doing that because it was a lead on that stayed for 2 days. During these 3 days, they tried to hit the lead several times. They got tired. They hooked into their limitation. And when the lead was off, they do not ever try to go away because they reprogrammed themselves into thinking that was their limit. It was no way to go out. They surrendered to that limitation. But not only that, their offsprings followed their example, which means they never even tried to go out. So let's reflect. What is your lead? What is that story that may affect your capacity to live your dream and make it real? For that intention to stop being just in your mind and being something that can create a different version of you that you may want to go, but you haven't tried that yet. If we go back to the flies, they stopped trying and they kept rewriting the same story. This is it, this is it, this is it. Being okay by what they had, but never tried to look beyond. And this is something that I want us, including me, to reflect, but not also to reflect, to connect within and to learn together how to find that potential, that possibility that may change everything for a greater good. Those stories, where they come from? They're going to come from what you think, what you tell to other persons, what you want other persons to think, from what's going on, what you hear from the persons around you. I remind a person that we worked together for 5 years, and every day at lunchtime she was complaining about how awful was her husband, but never did anything to change that story. And we're all saying like, oh, again, you may know someone that always complain, that plays a victim, that adds suffering into the moment, or is always upset, or is always trying to control. And any of that behavior, and maybe more, would be an element that would contaminate what we could do. Many of those stories are going to be programming us from our childhood because someone told you you are not allowed to do that. You have never do that. That's not for you. You shouldn't do that. You were not made for it. Doesn't happen in this country. If it doesn't happen in this family, just let's take a second and think. Where would you like to go? What would you like to do? Because if it's not now, when? I was listening to Jamie Lee Curtis. She just recently won an Oscar, and she was saying that when she woke up in her 60-year-old birthday, She said, God, I may die soon. When I'm gonna win the Oscar, when I'm going to produce a movie that I want, etc., etc. And then she said, time, it's just fading from my hands. So if it's not now, when? We don't need to wait to be 60 or 50 or 30 or 70 to set, I wanted to do that, but I never tried because I had a lead on it. At least I want to have 60 or 60 and said, I tried in where the way I wanted, but at least I tried that and I fall and I stand up and I cry and I was happy, and at the end feel complete with the journey. And have a sense of completion may not come from being joyful 90% of my life, because things happen out of the blue and that may not actually happen in this reality. But finding reasons in life to be okay with life, but also seeing potentials, it may be an ingredient of being joyful in your life. And that is being unlimited. When your story will be coherent with you, and that represents to me that I am the queen of my kingdom. Or if you're a male, that you are the king of your kingdom, that you have autonomy, that your inner peace, your balance, your potential, your abundance don't depend on someone else's ideas or values or stories about what you can do or you cannot do. Depends only on the inner capacity to self-improve, to reflect, to do your inner work, to always keep trying and trying and trying and looking for new ways to find that synergy between where I am and having that foundation in the now, but equally seeing that what if I could do that, and what if I could do that, and what if I could do that, because life to me, being unlimited, would represent that I can wonder, that I am not going to, maybe I'm happy in the jar if I'm a fly, because I have a family there and I have 2 offsprings and I have a partner, and then my whole family is with me, and maybe we're happy jumping in the jar. But what if I wonder for new things? And this is something that it's normal from a human being. You always wonder, what if I could do this? What if I do that? And those wonder sensations, it's part of creation. If no one has ever wondered that we could have a car, we will still riding in horses. If no one ever wondered that we could have airplanes, we will still driving in jeeps and in cars, and that will take a long time. When you wonder new things in your life, it is because you want to make the present better, comfortable, and it's part of the change that we all have. Imagine how practical it is to have diapers, to have AC, to have plumbing in your house when maybe 2,000 years ago they didn't have light. All of those things, it is because someone wondered. Imagine if we will still be using candles. We don't be having podcasts or internet, or none of that wouldn't exist, because no one wondered and everyone just stay comfort inside of the jar. But thank God, there were crazy persons that wanted or had this innovation or inspiration to see beyond and says, what if? And maybe they were ahead of their time. And that it's also okay, because now we can go back and be grateful for what Leonardo da Vinci did, or many all of those persons that create things that now we can benefit from. Because when someone allow themselves to wonder and think all of those what if questions, you unhook yourself from the part of your story that may be contaminated and find your own foundation on hope, on faith, on inner peace, on finding the solution that you need, or maybe your community need. And this is something that potential is not only to a single person. This is, to my own perspective, the unlimited way that will help all of us a community, because imagine how beautiful, and maybe this is too dreamy, would be if you go out and your country will be stable, economy strong, everyone has a beautiful family or by themselves, happy, complete. And then even if you go out and you feel like a mess, everyone will inspire you around you to align with the same synergy. Wouldn't that be a different story? Or if we were told in a school that you come from kings and queens and everyone was super smart, and because your ancestors were survivors in the evolution of the genetics, then you are here as a miracle thing. That, I guess, you will see strengthen us in like, oh my God, I'm special. It's not the same thing to say a kid, you are so special because you are unique, that to say, oh, you're different. And this is the shift and the story that can make life good, including the things that may don't feel that good, because perhaps those things are not in my hands to change. But I can be in charge of the story that I bring into my life. And I'm not talking about what I can do for others. I'm talking about to me. So I enjoy my day. I say to myself, if my day was 60% okay, I feel complete at the night. Because I think it will balance whatever things came out of the blue that I felt like, or I contaminate my story. And I notice when I will have initiative to gossip or critique or complain, and if I don't, someone that loves me will say, hey Gretel, did you notice that you say this in this form? Because sometimes we're not present, we're not here, we're not paying attention. For that, whether you meditate or go to therapy, or maybe your thinking is doing exercise, whatever you do that takes you out of the synergy of waking up, going to work, going to sleep, waking up, and give you a space to ask yourself, how do I feel? And what I can do for myself. That, I think, is the most helpful tip to unhook yourself from all of those stories. And maybe if you are not able to, you can ask a friend or a family member that you confide that can shed light on it and say, hey, maybe you can do this, maybe you can do that. And sometimes when you share something that troubles you to the people that love you and support you, your bottoming people, the persons that you can relate on it beyond how perfect or good you are, we notice that there are many options for things to do that you haven't thought about it, and you're like, oh yes, I can do that. And that happens when I have a coaching session or a healing session. I had in quarantine one day a session with two persons from New York. One says it was awful, need to use the mask, vaccines, blah blah blah, and the other person says, I don't need to wear the mask to go to work, I didn't vaccinate it, it's all good, no one used it. And I was like, it seemed like different countries. But it was two different persons, two different point of view from the same situation. And I remember a quote for Horace that says, nothing's beautiful from every point of view. And this is just remind us that we all reflect something from what happened, from our story, from what I value, from what matters to me, from what I minimize or what I exaggerated. But at the end, all of those are stories. Stories that we hear when we hear the news, when we hear the favorite person in the radio, or your musician or your friends. Every story will add an ingredient into your daily life, what you can do, and what you would like to rewrite. There are persons that inspire us, that you find admiration because they add an ingredient that you haven't thought about yet. And maybe we all have all of those persons that maybe it's a mentor or teacher or someone that you know that add that ingredient about going beyond your limitation. Sometimes other persons are going to see in you that unlimited version. But it's equally important that you take a moment to recognize that there are potentials that will open for you at all times, that every day we choose to take a different road to get to the same place, that maybe change the music, maybe I can change the way I feel against a circumstance. Perhaps I cannot change what others do because I'll be against their free will and that'll be manipulation. But I can change the way I go through by trying and trying and trying. And I would like to give a sort of disclosure in conclusion to this episode. There is a formula on design thinking that they say, first of all, a problem and limit you cannot change because it feels as if it's not in your hands. So you have to shift it into a circumstance because it's something possible. They say that there are problems that are gravity problems, like for example, maybe someone says, I hate Christmas. But maybe I cannot take Christmas away because millions of persons are going to complain about it. But maybe I can change the way I feel in relationship with Christmas. And how is it that I will do that? Well, in the second step in design thinking, it is to brainstorm ideas. They suggest 20 minutes to brainstorm lots of ideas, silly, nonsense, super ideas with innovation, with inspiration about possible solutions for that circumstance that you could do. And in the third step, you should go into the trying scenario and imagine if this could be a new product. This is where they ask, how do you find this product? Was it comfortable? Do you like it? How do you think about the price? And then in this case, if it's a company and the problem or the solution is a product, they wouldn't feel devastated because one person says, I think it was expensive. It wasn't that comfortable. They will just readapt it and readjust it and come up with a new version to supply the needs of the persons, because that product will be the solution for that circumstance that it was the first question. Applying this to our lives, whatever is your lead, whatever is your limitation, change your perspective from what you can do in relationship with. Brainstorm ideas in whatever moment you have, just to think about possible solutions. Otherwise, we're just stuck into the part where we complain, but we don't resolve anything. And then the trying part will require for us to give ourselves the permission to fail and not to succeed, but not something that will drag us down, but more like a way to obtain the wisdom that is going to make you resilient or innovate something new or create or unlimit and unleash what you could do. And the last step will be solving, unleashing that boundary that just hold you from that invisible wall that it was placed there, but in reality, it doesn't exist. There are many examples about limits that don't exist. And if you cannot see that in yourself, maybe you can see that in someone else's, someone in your circle, that it's always against something, but never does anything or initiate a way to rectify that, to unleash that. I think, just to conclude, there are boundaries or limits that give us a structure, and those are going to be good. I'm talking about limits that will be nonsense, that it doesn't make sense, that we may all have, and it's more like a way to self-sabotage you from finding what you want or where you want to go. And this is what I would love for us to go through in all of these episodes, to connect with that infinite part of you, but equally to grow that capacity to see potentials, through hope, to faith, to being positive, to being resourceful, to being creative. Whatever is your personality or your way, it's okay. But keep trying, because at the end, like Jamie Curtis says, if it's now, when? You guys can follow me on your social medias, leave a comment, support, and like if you guys like this space. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being here.